Hey there, vernacular faithful. Redcoat here. As I said in a previous video, I'm going to be talking about the four parts of play. Now, to recap, the four parts are recognition, adaptation, uncertainty, and experience. All four of these are required. Well, not required, but are present in some nature, in some form, when someone is actually playing. And it should be noted that anything can become play. It really is just a matter of when do you start having fun, or or more broadly, when does it become mentally pleasurable in a sense. So I'm going to start with recognition. Today we will talk about the concept of recognition. So, going back to where I kind of first encountered the idea, which was in the book Man, Game, Play, and Games. The original representation of recognition was as competition, and I changed it to recognition for a couple reasons. But the initial conception of it was the idea that it requires people to be going head to head, and there's a number of things that come out of that, which is specifically there's the social aspect of the people playing with each other. There's the aspect of them actually them overcoming each other as competitors, and so just having another person there really makes the play more interesting. However, the reason why I updated it to recognition is because I felt that the term competition is a bit reductive of the full aspect that can be applied, with the first element of it being that a person can play by themselves. Immediately, the concept of competition becomes a little bit, that word becomes a little less wieldy for this terminology, just because of the fact that you can play by yourself. And while, yes, you could compete against your past self, do time trials and race against your ghost, so to speak, if we're talking Mario Kart or video games of that sort, it's still a bit reductive, at least in my opinion, because there's more to this concept that they were trying to encapsulate in competition. Because not only can you play alone, but you can play together. You can play with other people, but not be playing against them. So again, the competition term is reductive. So the reason why I shifted it up to recognition was to actually highlight some of the elements that I think the original person was going for there. Because yes, competition is man to man, but one of the things is that competition with someone else requires you to understand them if you want to beat them. Like specifically in any game that has even a nominal amount of interaction, because there's play and counterplay. The other person is going to have some decision that they're going to want to make. And if you have enough understanding of who they are and what they're about, that you can know what that decision is, anticipate it, and counter it, that is to your advantage. You are incentivized to learn about the other person. You are incentivized to recognize who they are. That's why I use that term recognize. But it goes beyond that. So with this idea of recognition, you are learning who that other person is, just as they are learning who you are. And what's interesting about having a rival, which we see this all the time in shonens where it's almost a holy item, the idea that you have to have a friend who's also a rival. But the thing is that you don't necessarily see everything about yourself. So when someone else sees you and then does a counterplay, they identify something about yourself that you didn't originally know, and that pushes you to grow. And that's kind of that's the thing that they value in those shonens, is the characters like, all right, this is the person that I'm challenging. They set this bar that I have to reach. I've reached that bar. Now I'm going to face them. And the person's like, well, yeah, you reached that bar, but I can still beat you because I know this about you. Although they usually kind of dumb it down to, well, I got powerful, but they got more powerful. So that's the whole thing. But that's neither here nor there. Again, it comes back to that concept of recognition. Because you know them more, because you know them better, you're able to outplay them. You are able to outplay them, even if your abilities are less. You just know what they're going to do. And so that's one of the elements of recognition, but there's more to it. Because going back to that original definition of competition, one of the other parts of it was, the thrill of success and the pain and the despair of defeat, the tragedy of defeat. The triumph of success and the tragedy of defeat. And what's really happening there is, again, an element of recognition, specifically recognizing that, yes, I was good enough to succeed at this. And when you're facing off against another person, it's like, there's two parts. One is, I was good enough to beat them, but also I understood them well enough that I could actually play that, that I could actually exploit that understanding. Like, there's two parts to that. But when you win, you recognize yourself as a victor, as good enough to win. But the other person, per the proof of the game you just played, is also incentivized to recognize you as good enough to win. They're incentivized to recognize you. I say incentivized because they can still be what we would call a poor loser and reject the proof that is right in front of them and say, nah, I should have won. Which is, a thing. And some games are structured such that form of statement is valid. Some games are unfair. But with that in mind, there's still that element of general recognition. The idea of, yes, you won. And there's a pleasurable aspect to that. But even on the negative, recognizing that, no, I wasn't good enough. Wow, I lost. And the difference between losing poorly and losing well is how much cognizance you have with regards to why you lost and how you lost and whether or not you can accept it. Where if you lose and you don't recognize how or why, it definitely feels like you were cheated, and that creates a negative experience. However, if you actually recognize how you lost and you see step by step, oh, I made this decision, that was the wrong decision. Oh, I did this, oh, that was wrong. Then you're better able to accept the loss, recognize what you need to do better, and then move on to adaptation, which is not the focus of this video, so we're not going to be talking about that, but it's of note. But there's one other element that I have to talk about with regards to recognition. Like I said, this happens not only in the sense of head-to-head, but also working together. Because to work effectively with someone else, you have to be able to know how they do things, to recognize what kinds of strategies that they would employ, and how you can work off of those strategies. And a lot of games with that team element, one of the things that comes up is that you don't always have the time to plan. In fact, in a lot of sports games, it's generally understood that when you're in the play, you're not going to be able to really go, well, this is what I'm going to do now, and then I'm going to go and do this, and then this is going to happen, and then I'm going to do that. Like, you can't predict it. There's a lot of uncertainty there. which we'll talk about in another video. So what you end up doing is learning about your teammates' ticks and understanding and knowing that when they go and they do this, they're probably going to do this sort of thing. So I'm going to put, I know that I can be over here in this way to help them out. And that's why so much practice is required for a lot of team sports, because the team is getting to know each other and how they can work together. But the other element of that is, just communication as well, where you recognize there's only so much information that a person can know, and that you've got to convey information back to them. And so there's a social element to the recognition as well. And the very act of getting to know your other players, that is a pleasurable thing, in part because we're social animals, we humans are. But also the very communicating in of itself can be a pleasurable thing, particularly because you can actually have all four elements of play inside of the very act of communicating, which is fascinating. But I digress. That social aspect of getting to know other people, learning how they play, how their minds work, what kinds of things they can come up with, and you can even see it when someone's playing a game. And there's that moment where they look at each other and they just know. And what usually follows is one of the grandest grins you ever see. Since this is going up on YouTube, I can't use the proper term, but a particular type of grin, let's say. But I digress. That's why I changed the term from competition to recognition, because it's more all-encompassing of all the different forms of play that show up, all the different forms of games that we play, where it's not just learning about your opponent so that you can beat them, but it's also gaining an understanding of them, learning who they are more deeply. This is why one of the ways that a person can really get to know somebody is to fight them. Because in a fight, you're forced to learn things about how they do stuff. This is not me saying that you should go out and fight random people on the street. Rather, go to a gym, start sparring with some people. That'll teach you a few things about the concept of recognition, and also the idea of observing someone and understanding them. You can learn a lot about being present and recognizing things about people by playing against them in games and really thinking about, okay, why did they do this? Why would they make that decision instead of this one? Oh, it's because of this. Now, not everyone's going to be Sherlock and be able to figure out the entirety of a person's personality based off of their play of a game, but there's still something there, because it also helps you out in general conversation. It helps you out in life, just being able to look at people and understand them. And that's why the concept of play being really important to people's personal formation, this is one of the reasons why that's so super important, because this creates the person's ability to go out into the world and understand the people that go through it and some of the decisions they make that initially seem nonsensical. So that's recognition in a nutshell. The next one, I'm not sure which one it will be, but on the next one I will talk about another element of the philosophy of play. So until then, this has been Redcoat. Thank you for watching. And play the games you want to play, boyos. I'm signing off.